all of you go first. So we'll try and saturate your questions, and then we'll take the ones from the Zoom that people are submitting that Michelle will be monitoring throughout the presentation. If you hear after this about feedback from EC6 about trying to see or to hear or was blurry, typically it's the bandwidth issue, because we're having a lot of parents who said it was just fine. So we anticipate the recorded version that will be posted to our website tomorrow will be clear and be able to hear just fine. So in case you hear people out there that have trouble with it. So we are going to get going here, Spencer.
All right.
Just let me know when you're ready. Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the District 115 2021 Transition Planning Parent Presentation for the focus of grades 7 through 12, our secondary schools. The second presentation of the day, earlier today, we did EC through 6. Just for everyone's information, this will be recorded. We anticipate it will be posted on the website at the end of the day tomorrow. Not only the recorded version, but any of the materials and presentations, as well as the detailed plans that we're going to present this evening. What we are going to share, we're not going to get completely in the weeds on, so there will be more supporting information and documentation from each of the subcommittees that you will hear from tonight. And much like we are going to provide options and flexibility for our families, the presentation for our 7-12 also is providing some options. We have a group of individuals and parents that are in the audience live at the auditorium, as well as those that are participating online. And I'd like to thank those who are sitting here, all of which you are contributing to our district, either through parent-teacher organizations, through committees, our citizens advisory committees, our oversight team for this committee. So there's a lot of contributions that the members of those that are in person today are making. And I'd also like to thank those that are watching online. The questions that you will ask, I'm sure will be fruitful as we move forward in our planning and ultimately get to a final proposal to our school board in the coming weeks. I'm not going to pretend or try and hide the fact that as I stand before you, we have a very challenging time ahead of us. It certainly won't be easy. It won't be anything probably typical normal that we've seen at a middle and high school level in years past. And it's going to drum up and cause an array of different feelings and reactions. We're going to have parents and students and staff members who aren't happy with the final recommendation. We're going to have people who are anxious, afraid. We're going to have people who maybe hopefully are pleased and excited about there are going to be opportunities and choices. And hopefully there's going to be a sense of calmness to our parents and our staff and our community, knowing that we've worked really hard to get to a place that we feel good about. There's still a lot of questions, and there's still answers that have to be formulated to get to the beginning of school in August. If you can only imagine in a district of 900 plus employees, 6,400 plus students, 9-10 facilities, there's a lot of details that we have to figure out. And we're going off recommendations from a lot of different organizations, and also certainly with our local control. But much like a trip that we go on, much like a journey that we take, there's always usually a defined destination. And if you look at this slide, the 4 bottom bullet points there, that is our destination. That's where we want to get to. That's where we are going to get to. But just like those trips that we go on, there's going to be barriers, there's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be bumps in the road, there's going to be some unhappy siblings in the back seat fighting. There's going to be times where our gas tanks, our energies are low, but we're going to have to rally around each other and get through it and get to our destination that hopefully will be a better place and certainly a successful experience once we get there. So I'm asking as a community that as we go on this journey together, we find it within ourselves to be flexible, that we find it within ourselves to seek more understanding with each other, and that we have the unwavering belief that we are much stronger united than we are as individual schools or individual families or individual departments or staff members or grade levels. You know, if I didn't believe in the value of collaboration or working together, we wouldn't have these meetings. If I didn't believe in the value of working together, we wouldn't have all of our staff meeting with our principals prior to today to talk about the plans. There's value in this. We haven't brought this to our Board of Ed yet. So we're bringing it to our parents, we're bringing it to our staff before we've given the full plan to our Board of Education, because we want to work in collaboration. We want to make it the best opportunity for our students, our staff, and our families. I am a parent of a soon-to-be senior in the fall. I've had 3 students that go here through our schools. I'm still a community member. I have a wife who's an educator and a teacher who in a neighboring district. So I certainly care for your children. We are alike in that. I'm certainly anxious about the fall, and I'm certainly committed to making sure that we have the best plan in place for our parents, our students, our staff, and our community. If you look at the slide, the building blocks, that's why we're fortunate. That's why I believe we're different than other districts. We have 2 foundational pieces that are instrumental to the success moving forward. It's our amazing staff, and that's our completely supportive and amazing parents. With that, I believe there's nothing that we can't get through together. And we will get through this. 100% of us have a 100% track record of getting through our worst day, either personally or professionally. Whatever that worst day is, you go back in time, because you're sitting here. We're here today. We've gotten through it. Just like we got through the spring together, we're going to get through this together. And I'm confident in our plan. Frankly, I'm excited about our plan because we're getting kids opportunities, we're getting kids back in school, and we're improving upon the experience that we provided our kids in the spring. And we've worked really hard to do it. We will not let our parents down, we will not let our kids down. And that is our commitment to you. So I just ask to all of our community members, I ask for your patience, I ask for your true partnership, and I ask for grace, because we still have a ways to go. But the journey we're on is certainly one in which we're gonna tackle together and get to a better place. As we think about where we started back in the end of May, when things were winding down from the spring, we brought together 100 members, including all employee groups of our staff, including parents, administrators, and we created an oversight team, and then created 6 sub-teams that our 100 members worked with. Tons of hours of planning. A lot of the focus areas on the screen you see on the bottom right were the bulk of our conversations, trying to figure out how do we bring kids back in a face-to-face environment, how do we provide experiences for kids. And obviously with that, you think about the board policies from a human relations standpoint, from our employees, you think about student discipline policies, you name it. We're looking at it in conjunction with the work that these individuals have been doing. And a quick thanks to all of the members. It'll be easier to see probably when you're looking at a recorded version, but a tremendous value that they've brought. They've been incredibly humbling to watch work, and I'm eternally grateful for their efforts, because without them, we would have never made it to this point on July 14th. So very, very proud of their work, and I can't thank them enough. Outside of the team, we've also been in collaboration and worked closely with many outside organizations. When you look at the group in the box and all the acronyms, the HLERC is our legal counsel. Obviously, people know about the CDC and the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Kennesaw County Health Department and our State Board of Education, and certainly the work that we are aligning to with the Governor's Restore Illinois plan. So we, in preparation, we know we can't do it alone. We don't have all the expertise, we don't have all the answers, and we need the support of the groups there, both now, but also moving forward. And then the groups that are internal to us, many of which in the room here at the auditorium are part of, our advisory committees, all of our parent organizations. They've been a wealth of feedback and knowledge and support with kind words of encouragement along the way. And we'll continue to do so, as you'll learn at the end, prior to bringing this to final board approval. So back on June 23rd, the state board and IDPH came out with some must-do guidelines for schools. That document, 64 pages long, is something that those sub-teams went page by page through, and we aligned to see where our plan is similar, where it's different, and where we have to make changes. We were given the flexibility outside of these areas that you see on the screen to do local decision-making and local control. How we implement things, much is allowed for District 115, and we took advantage of that. What's the needs of our kids? What's the population of our students? When it comes to special needs kids, special programming, all the different grade level spans. So it is a blend of what the state must have guidelines with what our local decision making allows us to do. We also sent out a feedback survey a couple of weeks ago to our parents, asking at the point in time, beginning of July, where are you in terms of the educational model you would hope for your students as they return in the fall. So as you can see, we have almost 4,000 responses, fairly equally distributed between buildings, not exactly, but and this survey information is going to be instrumental, and has been instrumental as we look at the plans. If we were told that 100% of the parents are expecting to send their kids back, it's going to change. Even after these sessions, if we get information that 100% of our families want in school all-day attendance, then we're going to be coming back to our community and talking about what modifications we might have to make. I don't know exactly what they would be, but it's information that is certainly valuable as we move forward. Some of the other data points of this, the ideal educational setting that our sub-teams, some of the structure you heard tonight, the models are revolved around. You'll see almost 46% would like their kids in school, daily on-site attendance. Split days for EC through 8, 20%, and then our high school blended weeks, 15%. Decisions are being greatly influenced, as you can see by this chart, by health-related concerns that the parents have. And it doesn't specifically state what those are. Obviously, the mask is a health-related influence that is weighing on parents and students alike. On some ends of the spectrum, parents have sent me information and feedback saying, my son or daughter will not be coming if you're not requiring masks. On the other emails I received, my son or daughter will not be coming if you don't require them, or if they have to wear them. So it goes back and forth. There's a large, I guess, spectrum of viewpoints as far as the influence that decisions are being impacted by. Hygiene, disinfectant, social distancing factors, those seem to be obviously the greatest concern of parents, and they should be. The health and well-being of your child is the most important thing to you, and it's the most important thing to us. This involves transportation, just trying to get a sense, knowing that there will be limits of 50 individuals, 49 students, and 1 adult, or 48 students and 2 adults on a bus. And then the last was the lunch preference, with a large percentage, obviously, of people looking to send lunch with their child. All the data will be provided on the website tomorrow with all the other links. So if you want to look more at the information and take greater time to do that, certainly will be available. We also have gathered probably 1,300 individual responses that go along with this, that we are reading through each one of them. And I can tell you, as I've read through every line of it, it's health-related concerns. It's masks, it's hygiene, it's disinfectant, it's parents. Are parents going to be, how are you going to hold other parents accountable that they're being honest and sending their student to school if they're showing symptoms? And so predominantly, but then there's other just normal feedback about transportation and food service and curriculum and things that we're going to talk about tonight. So our charge as a district in preparation for the fall is to come up with 3 scenarios. Looking at a full capacity face-to-face where kids can come and receive their education as we typically have over the years on site. Certainly looking at a full virtual e-learning experience, similar to what was done in the spring, but obviously with modifications and changes, because we're better 4 months later than we certainly were in March. And then a hybrid, giving kids and parents flexible options to do some face-to-face as well as some online learning. We must be prepared to intermittently move between any model we put forward. We don't know what's going to happen. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but whether that's individuals, whether it's a class, a grade level, a building, our entire school, or the district. So we have to be prepared to be able to transition between these very quickly and effectively. As I introduced the charge to all the sub-teams in the oversight team, these were the considerations that I asked all of them to use as a lens for their work. So to please be mindful as they create plans and recommendations. They're not in any priority order, but as I've shared in mixed groups, I would venture to say the top one is the priority for our work. We are looking to demonstrate flexibility, care to the unique needs of kids, staff, families in our community. But other than that, we have to be considerate of looking at choice, to be fiscally responsible, to try and get people as much human interaction as possible. And they did a really good job to do that. They did consider these factors, as you'll see in the proposals that we're going to present tonight. As I briefly touched upon, the Restore Illinois plan is still in place. I'll get more into that on the next slide. We are likely going to be going in and out of plans potentially over the course of the year. And we will be following Governor Pritzker's and Restore Illinois planning as we move through the school year. As a reminder, if you look at the very top of the slide, phase one and two is what we were in the spring, predominantly e-learning, where essential employees, custodians, and administrators were in the district. Everyone else was at home. As we moved into June, we opened up to phase three, where we were able to do some things, particularly at the secondary level, with some strength and conditioning at the high school. But beyond that, we really kept people away from our facilities. But again, even in phase three, most of it is virtual, with the opportunity to bring small groups of people together if we desire. And then certainly where we are now, beginning in July of phase four, where 50 people less in one space is allowed, and then looking at various options. And that is what the state board and the state of Illinois and IDPH has given us the authority to move forward with the opening of schools. We do not have any information today regarding high school athletics or middle school athletics. The only thing I read right before this meeting started is that the IHSA, High School Athletic Association, will be following the guidelines of the IDPH. They're not going to create their own guidelines. They're waiting for the IDPH to give them direction. If we're going to have any fall sports or activities at the middle and high school level, that's who's going to dictate what that looks like. Obviously, we want to, so it's a wait and see right now. We have no new information. Is that true, David Krause, principal? So for tonight, we are going to spend most of the time talking about e-learning as if we were in phase 1, 2, or 3. What we learned from the spring, it will change for this fall if we have to go back to that. And we will also talk about giving parents options of full capacity, which we'll have 3 of them that we will share. If we look back at the spring, this is some of the themes of the data that our parents provided to us. We moved pretty quickly in a short period of time, and I believe as we would look around the state, I believe as we look around the country, we did a really good job. Our staff was fantastic, our parents were fantastic, and our kids were fantastic. We made some transitions quickly. We tried to maintain some sense of normalcy with our curriculum and instruction, with the expected outcomes of our curriculum. But we also know we could learn some things, and we have. So when you look at the themes, the communication, look at consistent expectations either across grade levels, across buildings, within the same building, support for students, smaller learning opportunities when especially at the primary and elementary level, but certainly even as the kids are getting into the middle and high school level, which all of you have children in. And the sub-teams have used this information, as you heard Dr. Boffman speak about, to make some changes in the event we're moving forward at any point in time within the e-learning. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Boffman to speak to the e-learning and then go into our options as we move into the fall.
Thank you, Dr. Schimpf, and certainly thank you for our parents and administrators and staff that are in attendance here at the auditorium tonight and those that are joining us online. I get the privilege and opportunity to talk to you today about the educational models that we'll have available for our students come August. One important distinction that I want to make first, just for clarity of purpose, the term e-learning you'll hear throughout any model that we have. Our goal is to provide students with options to participate virtually because if they or their family feels that it best meets a child's academic, health, or emotional needs. But first, I want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what e-learning could mean during each individual phase of the governor's Restore Illinois plan. And so there could potentially come a time where the governor issues the order to move back into phase 1, 2, or 3. Or perhaps we have an outbreak in Kendall County or here in Yorkville where the health and safety of our students and staff becomes paramount that we would need to move into an e-learning model. In that case, if we are in phase 1, 2, or 3, e-learning means something different than when we're in phase 4. And so I want to be clear about that. And so from a 7-8 perspective, we learned some lessons, as Dr. Schimpf alluded to, from our experience with e-learning in the 4th quarter of the 1920 school year. And so the staff has made some recommendations to change the schedule for 7th and 8th grade students to reflect the following. Instruction will happen 5 days a week in this model if we do go back to phase 1, 2, and 3. On A days or Mondays, all 10 periods at the middle school will meet for a short period of time. The teachers felt that they needed an opportunity to check in with their students, to assess the social and the emotional well-being of students, and kind of set the course for the week. On a B day and a C day, so the next 2 consecutive days, they're going to be running the 10-period block schedule. And then that would be repeated later in the week, assuming that it's a normal 5-day week. And if you remember in the springtime or the 4th quarter of this last year, there was a day in the middle of the week in which students didn't have class per se, etc. That has been removed from this particular recommendation that we'll take to the board for consideration on the 27th. And again, this is if we move back into phase 1, 2, or 3 of the governor's Restore Illinois plan. From a high school perspective, it looks a little bit different. And so if we go into an e-learning model from a high school perspective, they are still continuing with the A days on Mondays and Thursdays, where they'll be meeting for odd periods of time. Now, in both of these models, when I say the word meeting, it could be a combination of new instruction that's delivered through a video, pre-recorded video. It could be a live Zoom call where students get some more direct instruction. It could be a variety of different things. But during this time period, students would engage in instruction with their teacher. Odd periods being on A days, Mondays and Thursdays. The C day would be for Fox Team Time. That's our internal term for collaboration. And then also students would have the opportunity in 9th through 12th grade to engage with their teachers during open office hours. The B days would be Tuesdays and Fridays. Those would be typical even period days that would run on a similar schedule. So we'll take feedback from various groups and community members and make adjustments to these schedules as accordingly. But this is where we're at now in the event that we move back into phase 1, 2, or 3 of the governor's plan. With that being said, we have created plans that are flexible for families that will give them choice to choose which option that they want their child to participate based on their own academic health or emotional needs. That would include a full face-to-face option or a hybrid option, which means a little bit different from a 7th and 8th grade perspective than a 9th through 12th grade perspective. So I'll touch on that in a little bit. But from a focus area for tonight, what we'll do is I'll address the academic components of the plan, the schedule, et cetera. And each of our sub-team leads will come up and discuss the relevant components of the work that they have done from an operations standpoint, a human relations standpoint, a health and wellness standpoint, student and family support standpoint, and from a communication standpoint. And I'll say, as Dr. Schimpf mentioned, that he's a community member and a parent. I'm also a community member and proud parent of 3 Foxes. And so thank you to all of those individuals, those leaders of those groups, and all of the staff members that gave up time this summer to put together a plan that could meet the needs of all of our students. And so I'm going to start first by describing 7th through 8th grade, kind of through the phase 4 plan, and then I'll move on and describe the 9th through 12th grade as pertains to schedules, grading, specials classes, which is normally an elementary term. It's more of elective options for students at 7th through 12th grade, and then technology and resources. So to start, from a middle school perspective, we've got a short video that we would like to show you. Thank you. From a 7th and 8th grade perspective, as I mentioned before, the 3 options were really grounded in the foundation that we wanted to provide families with choice of their students' educational model. And so the 3 educational models, as Dr. Schimpf mentioned, are full capacity face-to-face, and that's with some health restrictions and requirements in order to keep our students safe. A hybrid or blended experience, which I'll explain what that means in the 7th and 8th grade level because it's a little different in the high school. And then a remote e-learning option, which is different than the e-learning option that I explained if we were in phase 1, 2, and 3. This is making the assumption that we're still in Governor Pritzker's phase 4 of his Restore Illinois plan. And so from a middle school experience, one of the themes that came out from our survey of students and faculty and staff was that we need to provide a consistent platform for communication. And the way that we're going to do that from 7th through 12th grade is through Canvas, our LMS, or learning management system. And we're also planning on opening up a parent portal to Canvas, which is the opportunity for parents to look in to see how students are performing during that coursework. Additionally, from a 7th and 8th grade perspective, their instructional model is now becoming more of a flexible model. And so this is a sample schedule. And so in this sample schedule, this really promotes the creation and the delivery of interdisciplinary units. And so when you see on those teams that term that's coined core team flex instruction, that is intended for instructional teams to get together, the 4 core, English language arts, math, science, and social studies, and make some flexible decisions on how they want to spend their time during a given week with some guidance and some parameters in order to ensure that all content areas are given some attention. But what this would do is it would give us some options for a team to make some decisions. Perhaps it's we need to spend a little bit more time on science because we're doing a lab that takes more time, and maybe a little less time in another content area in any given week. And they would then present that to their administration. That's their instructional plan for that particular week. This also provides flexibility for families to make the choice to be either an e-learning student, entirely online at home. What that means in this model is that students would participate in their coursework, but through a virtual environment. They'll either be assigned an e-learning teacher that would help them work through their core team flex time, or they would participate virtually and Zoom into a classroom or electronically attend a classroom if it was an elective or a PE course. From a hybrid perspective, in this schedule, if a family chose the hybrid model, that would essentially mean that they would be attending part-time. And families have a couple of different choices. The first choice would be that if I would elect that one of my daughters participates in a hybrid model, I might say I want them there for the core team flex instruction time. However, I believe that they could participate in the electives virtually or at home, and I can help support that as a family. In this instance, in this sample, they would be assigned, that student would be assigned to either team 7-2 or 8-2, that's in the middle of the screen, and that's the purple. And they would attend in person from 7:30 in the morning until about 11:45 in the morning. They would go home, they would have their lunch at home, and then they would participate in their elective classes in that afternoon. The opposite could be said if I'm a parent who wants my child to participate as a hybrid model, but yet I wanted them to participate in the hybrid from a PE or elective standpoint, and they can do their e-learning for their core instructional time. They would then be assigned to either the blue team in this model or the purple team, team 7-1 and 8-1 or 7-2 and 8-2, and participate in their electives here in person at school, and then participate in their core team flex instructional time virtually. Families also have the option, again, to participate in any one of these schedules or any one of these options virtually. From a 9th to 12th grade perspective, the high school, I did not leave you out. We have a video for you too. There are some nuances and some differences in the video, but some of it is the same. And then I'll explain the e-learning face-to-face and hybrid options that we have available from a 9-12 perspective. So from a 9-12 perspective, what we are recommending is a 85-minute block schedule that will happen on alternating days. And so in this sample schedule, you can see on our red days, we have essentially our odd period days, and on our white days, we have our even period days. From a student perspective, they would attend 2 days in a row in person, thus getting through the entirety of that block schedule, and then have 2 days off in which they are participating in blended learning online, meaning there will still be requirements, academic requirements on those days. They will still participate in either synchronous or asynchronous instruction. Synchronous meaning students gaining information at roughly the same time. Asynchronous meaning they can engage and move through the curriculum at their own rate and pace in which they are capable of. And then students would then alternate on the other day. So effectively, students are in person for 2 days and virtually for 2 days. This allows us to basically have approximately half the student population on the campus at any given time, which will then give us more opportunity for cleaning, for effective social distancing, smaller in-person classes, etc. And so think of it over a 10-day period. Students would participate in 5 days of in-person instruction and 5 days of blended instruction or online instruction. And so with this example here, students also have choices. Perhaps families and students have reservations about coming in for 2 days. Then they can choose an entire e-learning option where they would get all of their content and everything that would be online, wouldn't have to actually physically step on campus. We may have other students, on the contrary, that have different needs, and they may need to participate in-person instruction on a daily basis, and parents have that option as well. And so there are some differences when we speak from a 7-8 perspective and from a 9-12 perspective about what hybrid truly means from each of the respective levels, what e-learning means, and also it's dependent on the phase of the governor's plan that we are currently in. These options too, as our committees are continuing to have more and more conversations, at least from a 9-12 perspective, we believe this puts us in a position to eventually allow students to move through the curriculum asynchronously or at their own pace if they are ready to do so. Meaning if I am a student who does not do very well in my geometry class, but I am extremely talented in one of my social studies courses, I could work through my social studies course and potentially finish that course early, giving me more time to focus on the course in which I need more time to focus on. And so from that perspective, I'll introduce our leaders of our operations committee, Heather DeVary and Mindy Bradford.
Hello, Mindy Bradford and I co-led the operations sub-team. We first looked at reviewing building options and space layouts for the classrooms and the hallways. We focused on social distancing where students and staff would be 6 feet apart whenever possible. That would be a high priority for us. And we would also have students with assigned seats in classrooms. This would also pertain to the high school students as well. It's for contact tracing purposes. The high school students will still move from class to class. So in the hallways and the traffic flow, we will have stanchions in the middle of the hallways. So the students can be on one side of the hallway and the other side of the hallway and not mixed. We also will have directional arrows. They will be used for movement in the classrooms and down the hallways, along with social distancing markers that will be placed on the floors throughout the school buildings. We also went over school-wide cleaning and disinfection. The District 115 has developed disinfectant procedures per recommendations of the CDC. All employees will be trained on health and safety protocols related to the COVID-19. All cleaning of classrooms and common areas. We will be doing regular cleaning and disinfecting that will occur during the school day while students are present. We will also be deep cleaning that will occur each night when the students are out of the building. We will clean the frequently touched surfaces. Our high priorities will be on door handles, desktops, chairs, tabletops, lockers, light switches, pencil sharpeners, etc. And all of our soft surfaces such as furniture and rugs will be cleaned with a fabric disinfectant spray for the surface area. We will be vacuuming daily, and we use a high efficiency particulate air HEPA filter when we vacuum. Cleaning for when a student or staff member becomes ill. The District 115 has selected designated safe areas in each school as our quarantine rooms for individuals who experience COVID-19 symptoms. Once a confirmed case has been received, staff will close off any areas of the school used by the sick individual, and it is advised by the CDC that we wait 24 hours before cleaning and disinfecting if at all possible. Then those areas will be cleaned and disinfected, such as all offices, bathrooms, common areas, shared electronics, etc. All of our fans and HVAC systems that service the space will be turned off, so that way the particles that escape from vacuuming will not circulate through the facility. Then the custodial staff will empty those rooms and do a disinfectant cleaning on all those rooms. I know that playgrounds do not pertain to high school students, but if we do have any parents in here that have younger age students, we will be using the playground equipment, and that will also be have a deep foam cleaning done monthly or bi-weekly. And we will also each morning be disinfecting all the high touch areas on those playgrounds, and students will be cleaning their hands before and after use of any playground equipment. Next, Mindy will be going over food service and transportation.
All right. Okay, as Heather said, I'm going to talk about food service and transportation. So while she's focused on kind of internal operations, I'm really focused on external operations with our two partners, that being Aramark for food service and Septran for transportation. So you'll see some specific details of the plans there, but really what I wanted to get across is we're working on creating options for kids, trying to, they may not still have as many options as they had in the old world, but really still giving them choice. So giving them a couple of different box lunch options, as well as some select grill items. Aramark has been partnering with us fabulously in terms of all of the plans that we're trying to make. And our team has been partnering with David and his team at the high school, Megan Lisa Adler and her team at the middle school, in terms of trying to identify both how we're going to serve kids who are choosing Aramark meals, and then also where all of the students will be sitting to eat. So there will be designated areas at both the middle school and the high school where students will go to eat, and that would be whether or not they're eating their own food or whether or not they're eating food that's purchased via Aramark. And so we'll have supervision in those locations, and then be working with Heather and also with the staff who will be doing the supervision to ensure that those areas are cleaned in between the different groups of students that will be eating across the periods. And moving on to, oops, I'm sorry, went too far. And then transportation, this is somewhat similar. The rules in phase 4 are a maximum of 50 students or 50 people on a bus. So that includes aides, drivers, and students. So that is something that we're looking at as we're building our routes. We're currently building the routes kind of normal case, but as we get responses back from families and have a better sense of who will be attending which method, we'll be adjusting those routes. And I forgot to say it also about Aramark, but drivers and monitors at Septran or food service employees at Aramark will all be subject to the same self-certification symptom checks and temperature checks that we're doing with our own employees in our schools. And we are going to have assigned seating wherever possible from a contact tracing perspective. And we are, although I know sometimes it's not popular, kids don't always like their siblings, but we really do want family members sitting together again to help reduce risk And then in terms of cleaning, the drivers or monitors will be required after every route as part of their child check. They work from the back of the bus to the front. They will be required to spray down the seats and then physically wipe kind of the high touch areas as you enter the bus. So back to Heather.
Our operations sub-team also focused on outside visitors in the buildings. Pre-approved visitors will be allowed to enter the buildings through the main office after check-in. The computer that is used to assist with background checks will be disinfected after each use. Pre-approved lanyards must be worn, and they will be signing in and out of the main office. Those green lanyards will be disinfected on a daily basis. All pre-approved visitors to the building will follow the current restrictions with regards to COVID, so they must all wear masks, have their temperature taken before they enter, and have a symptoms check done. Pre-approved visitors will be limited to one door for entry and exit, and there will be no in-class volunteer visitors. I know that's more for elementary school students, but we will not have in-class volunteer visits to any building to limit the number of visitors in each building. Each main office will have a physical barrier at the counter to assist with social distancing as well. As far as the high school process for late student arrival, the high school students will enter the building and sign in. The students will have already done the required self-certification symptom screening, and the office staff will check them in and check for their masks. And students can enter either in the athletic lobby doors or the main entrance. The self-certification symptom screening, Melinda Lasky will be doing. She's our Director of Student Services. She will go over that later today in the presentation. Also, we have gone over restrooms, and in the elementary setting, we will be having scheduled restroom breaks. But in the high school setting, they can use the restrooms at any time, but they'll be monitored to assure social distancing. Like I said, we will have the spots on the floor outside. They will be cleaned on an hourly basis by our custodians. There will be physical barriers added between the urinals and the sinks, such as plexiglass screens. There will be signs posted to encourage hand washing and proper hygiene procedures in all of the bathrooms. And like I said, cleaning will occur between the scheduled restroom breaks, and the custodians will ensure that there's available supplies such as soap and paper towels in each bathroom. As far as locker usage, for the elementary setting, we will be using lockers. Students will be dismissed from their classroom in predetermined groups based on where their lockers are located. As far as, oh, I'm so sorry. As far as the high school and the middle school, the students will be issued lockers by request only. When the locker request is received, the student will be assigned a locker in the location that adheres to social distancing guidelines. Next, we'll be hearing from Troy Courtney, and he will be going over our human relations.
Good evening. So our group was, we had 18 members of our group. We had 24 different considerations that we were looking at. And our focus is, as you guess, on our staff, current as well as new staff. So as we look towards the opening of school, especially since we're looking at the face-to-face model, there's a lot of considerations that we have. We're going to have parents with students that will be coming to school. We have parents who won't want their students to be coming to school. Likewise, we'll have staff in the same situation. We'll have staff who can't come back to school because they're immunocompromised or have some other health concerns. And we'll have staff that just don't want to come back face to face because they're fearful or what have you. So we have processes and procedures in place to address all those different situations. We won't know until all the parents have made their elections as to what we can do to accommodate staff. We're certainly looking at staff members who are immunocompromised or have some health consideration to be our e-learning arm for those students who are staying home, for them to be able to provide support to that. One of the things that we are focused on when they're coming back is providing them adequate training on the use of PPE. They will also be going through the self-certification process that Melinda will talk about. It's an online application that we'll be using. My department will be responsible for tracking any symptoms. So if we get someone who does not certify to come into work that day because they have some symptoms, I'll be tracking that, following up with staff, see how we can assist the staff, see what we need to do moving forward. There is a potential for reassignment of staff, but that will be really based upon what our students' population is, what our needs are within the building. So as we get closer to the school year, we'll know more what that's going to look like. Classroom setup, I believe Heather, you talked about templates, I would say. Heather has gone around to all the buildings and set up sample classrooms. And those are going to be models for our teachers to be able to use so that they can get their classrooms set up appropriately that fits for their instructional needs, but also maintains the distance that we need. Legal and contractual, that's my area most of the time. As I mentioned, we're going to have staff who are unable to work, so we have things such as FMLA, ADA, Family First, Coronavirus Response Act that will address some of those. And then we have those that will refuse to come to work, and we'll have ways to address that as well. Communications, let's see, new staff orientation. One of the things that we've changed is how we bring staff on board. I looked at a couple different things. One, we have the orientation that we do, in particular with new teachers, but there's also the onboarding process. All the wonderful forms that we all love to fill out when we go to HR when we first get a job. So we've moved that to not truly online, but we send out the forms electronically so that people can complete them, get them back to us. So we minimize the amount of face-to-face, we minimize the amount of touching of documents. Just again, to try to keep the environment as safe as possible for all of our staff. At the beginning of this year, normally we have 3 institute days for our staff. This year we're going to have 5. 2 of those are remote planning days. So we need extra time to get prepared for the school, get the classroom set up, as well as doing some additional planning and training for all of our staff. We'll be explaining what the daily symptom check is, how that works, proper use of PPE, hand washing. You'd be amazed if you go on and watch the CDC's video or IDPH on hand washing. Pretty sure that most of us do it incorrectly. It kind of looked like I was watching someone getting ready to go into surgery when they talk about how you should wash your hands. We will train people on the signs and the symptoms of COVID-19, provide professional development relating to that. We'll also look at providing resources for mental health as we go through the year. This is a stressful time for everybody. So we're gonna have a number of resources, both internal and external, that people will be able to refer to. One of the key components for this year as well, because we don't know what the year is gonna look like, is gonna be our substitute staff. So we're looking at changing what the way that we pay them to try to entice more substitutes into the district, so we have those supports in place in case any of our staff members become ill. We're also considering looking at having, permanent subs in each of the buildings. We're still weighing the options on that as to which would be more beneficial to us to do. And the other area we're looking at, we'll be sending out a survey within the week to staff, get a better understanding of which staff would be willing to substitute into a classroom. It's always been fairly easy in the 7-12 realm because teachers have planning periods and they can go cover a class period. This year, they may not be willing to do that. So we'll get a gauge on how many teachers can do that. We also have a number of paraprofessionals in the district who have teaching license, who can sub in the classroom. So we're trying to look at every aspect to make sure that your students are covered and keep the education moving forward and keeping everybody safe. And with that, I believe the last thing.
In the area of health and wellness, our committee obviously takes the health and wellness and safety of our staff and students to the greatest extent. And so the information that we gathered and planned for is personal protective equipment on hand and in stock. We will have adult disposable masks. So if a student or a staff member comes to school and does not have a mask, we will provide them with a mask. We have face shields, and so face shields can be used if a student or a staff member has a medical condition and their licensed healthcare provider provides a note. We will consider allowing the staff member or student to wear a face shield, or if it's part of their position or job where they would, be providing speech services or maybe speaking in a different language where you might have to be able to view their mouths. We also have rubber gloves, custodial grade and also medical grade. We will have disposable vomit bags to reduce the amount of exposure and cleanup. We also have medical gowns available for our nurse staff, our custodians, and then also paraprofessionals or teachers that may be providing support to a student or duties that require a medical gown. We also have touch-free thermometers at all of our school buildings available to do a self-temperature check. We also have hand sanitizer, disinfectant, tissues, and then emergency albuterol. So if a student is having difficulty breathing, we can provide that student with emergency albuterol. In the classroom setting, we will have students use their own supplies, so we won't be sharing pencils, pens, items like that. We also, at the high school and middle school level, students will sanitize their hands before any transitions and as they enter the classroom. Once they're in the classroom, they will be able to take a sanitizing wipe and wipe down their work area before they use it, based on the amount of transitions they have in the school day. We also will be providing parents, students, and teachers information on proper hand washing, including videos to review at home so that your students are able to properly wash their hands when they're at school, but also we will provide information about how to put on and remove your mask and then store your mask during lunchtime or any time that you would remove it to eat or drink. We also will have signs posted in all of the learning areas, the hallway, on the doors, and the cafeteria about social distancing, the importance of wearing masks, and the importance of hand washing. There will be daily reminders on the announcements about wearing masks and the importance of wearing your mask. On a daily basis, our staff and students will be sent via email a health questionnaire that will be required to be submitted before students are able and staff are able to enter the building. And the questionnaire will ask the health symptoms that are related to COVID, which would be cough, chills, any type of muscle aches, sore throat, runny nose, recent loss of taste or smell, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, shortness of breath, headache, and then in close contact or cared for somebody with COVID-19. Staff and students would submit that after taking their self-temperature check, and then when they enter the building, we will be able to see in the system that they are approved. If they are not approved, there will be a separate place for them to go through the self-certification process. If parents or staff or students receive a positive diagnosis of COVID-19, we ask that you report it to the attendance line as soon as possible, or via the daily self-certification process, and an administrator or nurse will follow up with you immediately so we can start the process of contact tracing, determining what supports we need to put in place, what type of cleaning needs to happen, if we need to relocate a classroom to another area to clean that classroom, if we need to have one classroom or two classrooms go into quarantine. We would follow all of those processes that way. And then obviously, as secondary families, you don't necessarily need childcare before or after school, but we are continuing to partner with the YMCA to provide that for elementary level. We are recommending restricting visitors into all of our buildings based on need and pre-certification. And then as we move into phase 5, we will consider re-implementing rentals of our facilities, but at this time we are not allowing any rentals in our facilities. And then next, with student and family support, I have Shannon Ham and Dr. Marcello. Hello. Our committee had 3 overarching areas. The first one was special ed, EL services, and 504 plans, and students that are in dual language possibly, or that are in dual language. The second one was interventions and supports, and then the third one was training and communication. And under the guise of special education, EL services, and 504 plans, we just wanted to reassure all the parents that we are still going to adhere to all of the plans and the resources that have been put in place for your children. All of the timelines for IEP meetings and annual reviews will still be met. Any testing that wasn't completed will be, that's going to be the primary focus of getting all of that testing completed as soon as possible. And one thing that we were doing in the spring that we're going to continue throughout this year to reduce additional people coming in the building is IEP meetings will be held over Zoom instead of in person. And then, as usual, if there's any questions that parents have, we ask for you to ask the case manager, your school principal, if there's a assistant principal or somebody that you're comfortable that you've worked with before, you can always reach out to anyone at this point or throughout the year. Under interventions and supports, we've been working on plans to continue those interventions throughout any of the models of learning. So whether we're in e-learning, face-to-face, or hybrid approach, we've been coming up with plans for how to continue those interventions and provide those interventions to students. And at the beginning of the year, as Dr. Rothman mentioned, our big focus is going to be trying to get a gauge of where our students are, if there's any learning gaps that we need to address. We're going to possibly be putting in extra supports for those students if they need those supports with those skills or those academic areas. And then a big focus of our committee has been on the mental support for families, for not just for their students, but how to support their student through all of these changes. So we have a bunch of resources that we put together, both in school and out of school resources for families, for staff, and for students. So some of that is just providing extra time in school to talk about changes, expectations, coming up with some things like videos for welcome back to school, different virtual options for students to still feel welcome, but yet not have such a large group in one place. And the other big part of ours was the parent handbook. So as ISB gives us new guidelines, we're going to have to make adjustments to our student handbook. And so as those come, we will just make those adjustments.
So just in summary, I just want to say, and Dr. Schmidt mentioned it earlier, one of our greatest assets in our district is the collaboration and support with families. And so a lot of the families who have children with IEPs, 504 plans, RTI plans, or English language, dual language services have very unique programs. And so flexibility is the key, and so is communication. So it's important to know that we're aware of this and that you'll have a direct contact person in each building, and certainly you can call me at the district office if you have any specific questions. Thank you. Sorry about that. Next up is Ms. Liptrap, who will review communication.
Hello, I'm going to go through the communications subcommittee, which is the last team that we'll be talking about today. Communications was based on a lot of research. We looked at survey results. We had a number of surveys that were done in the spring: the parent survey, the student survey for students in grades 7 through 12, as well as 3 different employee surveys. And then on top of that, we also did a content analysis of the website and all the communications from the spring, which included specifically the e-learning communications, as well as those communications that were sent out to our Spanish-speaking families. What we found is that the feedback results covered all 3 areas with similar concerns. So we'll be taking those, instituting them this year, and continuing it no matter which phase that we tend to be going through. So the concerns were in 6 different primary areas. One was timeliness. Stakeholders want to be kept up to date in a timely manner. They want to be informed. They want messages put in writing, important things such as dates and procedures, and to have those posted to the website so that they could look at them in future for reference. They also wanted to limit video conferencing for check-ins, for questions, immediate needs, where that face-to-face connection would be most important. Accessible. They want an educational platform that both students and parents could access in regards to finding out what the assignments are, as well as a common calendar system. Consistency was also important. They wanted us to be consistent with the mode and timing of communications. So, for example, if principals would send out a newsletter one day of the week, then they can expect another day of the week that the district newsletter is distributed. They want us to be focused, which is combining all the information into the fewest number of emails as possible. Across the board, we heard information that there were just so many emails coming out that all had important information, but not only were they coming through the district system, they were coming through other systems, and people were starting to feel overwhelmed. We're also going to work on avoiding the redundancy between those emails. So if something is in a district email, we might not repeat it in the school email, but once again, we post it so people could look that up for future reference. And finally, they wanted to simplify the process. So reduce the number of different communication platforms and reduce the number of messages, not only between departments, but between grade levels, between schools, and between the district. So we took all that information and we developed 3 different areas of plans. One was a communication action plan. We have 3 major event plans, and then we also have 3 different communication templates. So first, we're going to go through the action plan and provide a brief overview. And as I said, many of these suggestions were things that we should be doing as a normal process. So they will be implemented no matter what phase we're in, and even once we're in phase 5 and everybody's back to school full time. So it took a look at climate. A variety of activities are being planned that continue the We Are Yorkville theme to help unify the district. Virtual recognitions are going to be something that's done more automatically. Typically, we had done recognitions within the school. Now we will be posting those online so that those who are not in attendance can also be a part of that recognition. We are going to continue to collaborate with our parent-teacher organizations to ensure that students at different buildings have a similar experience across the district. When we look at the calendar system, as Dr. Baughman mentioned, we were looking for something that both the students and the parents can view so that parents could feel more involved in their students' learning. So they know their deadlines, they know what their due dates are. So for grades 7 through 12, that will happen when the Canvas parent portal is open. For help and assistance, there were a lot of requests for additional documents to be produced and video tutorials, and for those to be posted to the website to help out both students and parents, and to do both English and Spanish. We're going to be looking to enhance the information that is available on the district website, so it's heavier on the academic side to offer those resources to parents and students. And then families will be encouraged to use the district help emails so they know where to go for additional information. In social media, again, we're looking to put more of those recognitions online. In addition, we're looking to do a little more cross-promotion between the district and between the school social media platforms. So if you follow the district, for example, you'll also be following your school's social media. And that comes into play, especially since we're going to try to reduce the redundancy of our messages. And then in regards to communication with families, ideally, we're looking for a principal e-newsletter to be sent out on Fridays on a consistent basis. And then on Mondays, have the district newsletter sent out only if new information is needed to be shared. In that information, especially from the school level, we're looking to put a link directly to that Canvas portal so parents have a weekly reminder of where they can go for their students' information. We are also going to be conscious to watch out for the redundancy, again, between that district and those school newsletters, and to post all those newsletters on the website so parents can refer to it in regards to things such as procedures and dates at a later time. We are going to reserve our phone calls to families for emergency communications or for check-ins on students in times in which multiple emails have gone unanswered. We are going to open up the texting option within the district's alert notification system so that we can reduce the number of platforms teachers are currently texting on, such as Remind or ClassDojo. We would like to reserve Zoom for virtual classes and also for those student check-ins. We would like to continue to use Zoom for parent-teacher conferences so that we have more parent participation. And then we would like to keep in mind the student preferences when we're looking at video conferencing. They prefer pre-recorded classes and to use Zoom for questions and answers, or if a class has to be held on Zoom, that it be done in small groups. They find that more effective. For the website, districts and parents and students want the website populated with additional information. Students wanted a specific student portal so that they have a place to find their information, and then again, post other tutorials in the newsletters. We also have been asked to make sure and messages are translated into Spanish for our Spanish-speaking community. Under major events, there's 3 major events that we looked at. The first was Employee Opening Day. We have developed different activities to unite district employees that can be done if employees are at separate buildings or if it's completely virtual. We also looked at the first week of school, and we have themes and suggested activities that are intended to unite the district as a whole. And we purposely made all activities adaptable to different ages, different ability levels, and teachers can use their discretion in developing other ideas that fit in with that theme. We also looked at large-scale district events. We have a list of them available, but we are making sure that each district event has at least a virtual component to it so that everyone can participate, and then also a contingency plan that it can be done completely virtually in case we are in an e-learning situation. we have 3 different templates that we also created. One was a reopening plan announcement, and that was a letter to students, a letter to parents, and a letter to employees to inform them about what phase we are opening school. Communication channels is the list of all the different communication channels that we use that are district approved and which channels work best in which situations. And then finally, a re-entry checklist. And this effort was led by a nurse on the communications team to make sure that the list met federal, state, and district guidelines. So with that, I will reintroduce Dr. Shim.
Thank you, Christine. As I hope you're getting to understand, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of decisions and intricacies of the work that's been done by these committees, and that still has to be done to go from plan to implementation. But we are on the right course, and we're certainly confident to get to August and open things up. I do want to share with you, one too many, some proposed calendar changes that I will be presenting to the Board of Education, first on July 20th, and then hopefully for approval on the 27th. One of them is Election Day. We are required to take the day off as a district, but we need to replace it with another student attendance day. So we are going to look to move the last day of school for students will be May 27th, with the following day as an institute, the last day of staff, assuming we have no emergency days, which we're allowed 5 in case of snow or some other situation that would occur. And then the second change we're proposing is we are provided 5 remote learning planning days for our staff. We are asking the board to allow us to use 3 of those at the beginning of the school year in August. So 2 will be on the 18th and 19th, pushing our first day of student attendance to August 20th. And then once we get into school for 7, 8, 9 days, we want to come back and do 1 more remote learning planning day in August on the 31st, giving our staff an opportunity to review things that are happening in the bathrooms, in the hallways, in the buses, in the classrooms, and what modifications, and giving our teachers time on that 31st to work together, and for administrators to make some changes if we see fit. Moving forward, we're going to move pretty quickly. Obviously, where we are tonight, immediately tomorrow, by the end of the day, we will be posting our plan. What you are hearing tonight is an overview. On the slides, the presentations, there's a lot more detail to many of these areas that our public will have access to when we post it at the end of the day tomorrow. We will be reviewing the parent feedback from this evening, the questions that are being asked, both live but also through our Zoom, putting together an FAQ document for our public that will, by the middle of next week, will be available. On the 16th, we have 2 meetings, one with our committee oversight team, and then one with our Citizens Advisory Council. We'll be talking through the plan and getting feedback from that group, making any adjustments and going to the board. We have a summer work session on the 20th with our board, in which we will have lengthier discussion about aspects of the plan. Then after the 20th, I anticipate we're going to bring our staff back together in the evening on one of those days of the week of the 20th, possibly present something or share something back out to our public if needed, prior to our board approval process on the 27th of July. It's a 7 o'clock meeting. And then we have a meeting already scheduled for our staff on the 28th, anticipating we'll have information to share with them. We also anticipate the week of the 28th is when we will communicate back out with our parents, asking for a final decision to be made from our parents by the 31st. If we do not hear from our parents after probably multiple attempts to get in touch with those who haven't responded, we will assume that you're coming back for on-site full instruction, unless we hear otherwise. And then obviously the work and is ahead of us to open up by August 20th. What I ask of all of our parents and our community members is to please look at the documents, review them on our website. They'll be easily accessible. Read our plans, read the areas that are of greatest concern to you, the greatest of interest from a grade level perspective. And then there'll be multiple areas where there'll be a comment and feedback box where you can submit questions or comments, and then will come directly to us, and we'll distribute to the teams to review as we move forward. Right before the meeting, there was a quote that I read about, we don't get burned out because of what we do, we get burned out because we forgot why we do it. We haven't forgotten why we're doing it. We're not burned out. We know our role. We chose this profession. I chose my role as a superintendent. These individuals, our principals, our staff, they chose to work with kids in the schools. We're not burned out. We're anxious. We want to make the best opportunity for our 6,400 kids and our 900 plus employees and our 20-some thousand community members. We want District 115 to be the best. We're not burned out. We're going to have a great plan. And we're going to make you proud as parents and community members, and we're going to give the best educational experience we can give our kids. I can guarantee you that. We will be ready. But we need your work. We need your partnership. I started the presentation by talking about patience and grace and partnership. I need that from all of you. I need that from our community. And we will get through this together, and we will be very proud of the product that we created. So at this time, I am going to start by opening up to the questions that our in-person parent group has asked. And Mike Vargas from our business office and Michelle Bryant, our Grand Reserve principal, will be helping to moderate. I'm going to ask those who are answering the questions to repeat them if we need to. And then once we are done with those questions, we will open up to our questions that were submitted through Zoom.
Thank you, Dr. Shim. I'm going to jump right into it with a business question. How are all of these changes regarding all of our plans being financed?
Clearly, there are significant costs that we have to invest. We are, whenever we can, applying for various grants. We have the CARES Act grant, and Mike Vargas on my team has spent time. There's also an Illinois Emergency Management Act grant. So certainly that's one of the ways that we're looking to finance those, but there will be a required investment. So we are looking where we can reallocate resources, and we're also, looking where we can do bulk buying and things to make these purchases as cost effectively as possible, as well as trying to purchase items that can be repurposed after, COVID, if we get kind of on the other side of this. So trying not to make a lot of, one-time purchases that won't have dual purpose down the road.
There's certainly, as we look at costs, when you think about custodial costs, when you think about supplies, when you think about the individuals who have to greet students and staff to make sure that they're not entering the building without taking their self-certification test. Those are additional costs that we are obviously going to have. We're also going to be looking, like we do every year, on how do we reduce spending? Are there areas that we can cut back on that we typically wouldn't have to in a time of a pandemic that we're in? So I think it's a fair question, and as one of the considerations on the earlier slides talked about, we still have our board is still expecting that we come back with a plan that's trying to maintain fiscal responsibility. And as we bring the budget forward in September, we've been proud of the work that we've done to maintain a balanced budget on an annual basis. I can't promise we're going to do that, but we're going to try. We're going to look at every avenue to do that, as Mindy cringes. But that is our responsibility as public servants to our taxpayers.
Thank you, Mindy. Dr. Shim. Next, we have several curriculum questions. Please explain how students will be selected for in-person classes.
I'm going to make the assumption of that question that that's a 9-12 question. And so from a 9-12 perspective, the preferred model is the 2 days in person and 2 days off person or off in a blended modality. And in that regards, students that are at risk with potential needs to be in class or could have an IEP or some language barriers, we would invite those students to attend in person as an as-needed basis. Mr. Travis?
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through a pretty rigorous process. Many schools are deciding between the 50-50 model of 50% coming on site, 50% are gonna work in remote by alpha slice. We do not believe that's a good approach. We are actually gonna take the approach of we're gonna start going through our singleton courses first, looking at that, looking at our siblings as well, trying to match those up, and then going into our most at-risk populations and going through, because we don't want to split our classes up and have a disproportionate number of students in groups in those kind of situations. In terms of students that we are looking to bring more frequently, we're going to work with a lot of our staff that know our students very well, that they feel that they need to come a little bit more frequently, so we have more touches on them. We also have experiences from the fall or from the spring. We know some students that really did well in remote learning, and we know some students who did not do as well, and we may need to have more touches with them. And then we may gradually move them back into a more of a balance of the instructional model. Because our instructional model, regardless of the course you're in, you can be in remote, you can be on site, or you can be fully in person, and you will be in the same class. So we're not changing that. Many other districts are limiting that. For us, we didn't feel that was an option, so our instructional model accounts for that in all of our classes. Especially if that would have happened with our advanced placement classes, with some of them only being the only option out there if a student selected a remote, and our AP biology teacher, for example, was not going to teach remote, that could limit an option for a student. We didn't think that was appropriate.
And as I mentioned earlier, I made the assumption that that question was 9-12. If that question was from a 7th, 8th grade perspective, if, like Dr. Shimpin mentioned, if the family does not respond, our default option would be full-time face-to-face with restrictions in the classroom at the middle school.
Thank you, Dr. Baughman. Mr. Travis? Next question. If the learning method, on-site, hybrid, etc., is not working prior to the end of the first quarter, can you make the switch?
Yes, we're asking for a quarter commitment for families. That helps us from an administrative standpoint and also from some continuity for students standpoint. But we will work with our families. If it's not working after the end of that first quarter, or from a high school perspective, the first 9 weeks, we are providing an option for families to make a modification of education model.
Thank you. Will classes like band, choir, and PE look different? How will these classes utilize social distancing and be safe for our kids?
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge for us. We know that. Mr. Anderson is, thankfully, is on my subcommittee, which has been great. One of the pieces we are going to do is one of our first starting points for our deciding on our A-B split is going to be in music, because part of it is ensembles. Mr. Anderson is working through a pretty extensive piece of research that just came out about the aerosol effect of playing instruments, and those different instruments that require some different approaches to do that. Right now, the flutes are a little bit the most challenging right now, we have to figure out. However, Mr. Anderson and his team are working through a process that we will use large open spaces. We will try not to use them frequently. I think Heather and her team is going to really do some different things with our air handling system to limit the exposure for our students.
And we also,
go outside.
yeah, and I was going to say, we also need to maximize our outdoor space when they're weather appropriate.
Thank you. The next question is in that same path. In regards to electives, AP, and honors courses, could qualified students be denied these options due to capacity issues?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Travis. Will the start of the school year, the first day of school, be changed if additional PD days are provided by the state? Are used?
Yes, as we spoke about, we're proposing the first day of school to be August 20th. adding 2 additional PD days to that first week.
What types of breaks from masks will middle school kids have throughout the day if they choose the full day option? Will there be any outdoor time for learning?
This is Mrs. Adler, our middle school principal.
Hello. At lunch, students will wear their masks to get their lunch and to go to their table, but once at their table, they don't have to wear their masks. The PE department is working very hard to develop really great activities outside. So outside for PE, as long as they're 6 feet apart, they do not have to wear their masks. Our teams, our core flex teams, are also going to be looking at ways that we can be outside, especially, at the beginning of the school year, to give that break as well. The same question is what our teachers are thinking of as well, all separating, with that social distancing appropriate. So yes, we're trying to think and be creative on how we can help our kids with that.
Thank you, Sarah. Where will students store their books, belongings if they don't have a locker?
The middle school, our students, the last 3 years have not really used their lockers. Everything is in that backpack. And so the teachers have already set up procedures on what to do with their backpack when they come in the room. Some teachers have hooks, some teachers have them put them on by the windows, but this is not something new for us with the lockers.
And for high school, we were probably less, I think we were almost down to less than 20% of our students used lockers last year to clean it up. So it's high school, they don't use.
And as stated previously in the presentation, if a student would like to use a locker, they are able to do so, and we would set them up systematically in an appropriate distance method.
And Ms. Adler, how do they go about that request?
They can email me, and I'd be happy to assist.
Those are details that as we get closer to school, once the plan is finalized, we communicate with the families.
Please do not email the high school principal.
Oh, yeah.
Can I pick different plans for my children or just one as a family?
You may pick different plans for all your children.
Yes.
If a student selects the hybrid model, what will electives look like remotely? Will it be a different curriculum?
No, it will not be a different curriculum. We are setting up our model. It really allows us to do some really great stuff on site and remotely for our students. So we talked to our staff today, the high school staff, about some of those ideas, like our Project Leadway will be more demonstrations and hands-on experiences and projects when they're on site, because they have access to the materials and tools and resources they need. Same with our art programs and other elective programs. So for us, we see this as a big step in the right direction for us, to allow our kids to really have both the best of both worlds.
The hybrid high school model showed 10-minute passing periods. Will students be staggered during this time?
The challenge with staggering high school passing periods is the students don't travel all in one direction, all to one spot. So if we staggered our dismissal times, what would happen is we can have groups of students congregating out of certain rooms and waiting to get into a room while the other kids are starting to held back. So we really put longer passing periods to allow our staff to do some quick sanitation in their rooms. Many of our rooms will be used back to back, but we're working on a plan where desks will not be used consecutive periods or tools or resources. But we're also going to have routes of travel for our students at times. For the high school, we have 2 campuses, 1 school. So many of our students are crossing, our freshmen, about 50% of our freshmen will cross the street throughout the day many times. So we are going to build in some of those natural opportunities for some of our upperclassmen to travel outside to go to their next classes, to give them sometimes a little bit of a break in that experience. We're a little more used to it at the high school because we're used to supervising that and providing this different structure. So we're going to try some of that to help that as well.
Will IEP teams be including language in the IEP to explicitly address supports for and during remote learning?
So similar to what we did in the spring, a student with an IEP will also have an individual e-learning plan, and that will be discussed with the team and the parent via Zoom phone call. And certainly parents have input, and it's a discussion about how to meet your child's needs during the e-learning model.
Thank you, Dr. Marcel. Next here, we have a transportation question. Who provides transportation if families choose half-day in person? Will they be given the option of AM or PM, or will that be decided by subdivision?
If a hybrid model is chosen, the transportation will be provided one way. So if a student chooses AM, we would provide the transportation to school, and then the family would be responsible for the midday transportation. If a student chose PM, same thing, the parent would be responsible for getting the child to school, and then we would provide transportation home for that day.
We have another transportation question here. How will students be kept in groups of less than 50 at drop or pickup spots?
We're working with our facilities team in terms of coming up with multiple drop locations at each school. Actually, Mike is going tomorrow to look at some of the different facilities. And then a lot of times we release students all at once. We're actually going to have a more staggered release. So as buses arrive, they will be released. And then hopefully that will create some natural spacing that we would need.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. So many of the daily health questions are symptoms of so many other things. If a student marks that they have a runny nose, for example, what happens next?
So with the self-certification and the symptom survey or health questionnaire that is sent to parents, when a student or a staff member has any of the symptoms, they will be immediately emailed information that the student needs to stay home. You can you'll be required to follow those requirements, but if it is something that is not due to COVID, if a student has repeated allergies, or the student has a fever because they have an ear infection, with documentation from their licensed healthcare provider, we would obviously make those exceptions.
Thank you. If you choose an all e-learning plan for high school, how does a student maintain getting all required credits to graduate, such as PE? Will it impact requirements?
It will not impact requirements. PE can be done remotely, and as we've done blended PE for many years. So we've had students do on-site and in-person PE, or on-site and remote PE for us for years. So we're can work through that. In PE, the requirement is daily participation, and we'll meet that requirement. So PE will not be an issue. They're fully remote.
Please explain how contact tracing and quarantine will work should a student or staff test positive or be sent home because of symptoms developed during the school day.
It's important to know that we have plans put in place if a student or a staff member in the classroom exhibits a symptom of COVID-19. We have relocation areas where we can relocate the class to another area and sanitize that classroom. If that takes place, we will communicate with parents and staff immediately. We also have a healthy waiting area for the nurse, and then a COVID symptom waiting area, which are completely separate. So the staff and students would be separated in that aspect. If, immediately when we find out that there's a presumed case of COVID or a positive diagnosis of COVID, we would start the contact tracing process of what staff members were in the classroom, what students have been in the classroom, anytime that they are within 6 feet of the person that was diagnosed, for more than 15 minutes, then we would look at the quarantine process. There may be one classroom quarantine, there may be 2 or 3. There could be times where the entire school building is quarantined, and we would, pivot into e-learning. The important thing that for you to know as a parent or as a staff member, that we would keep whoever that student or staff member is confidential. We would not share who has COVID or any of that information, but just give you guidelines as to what your next steps are.
Thank you. When someone calls in their student sick with a headache or fever, can they return to school the next day without follow-up, or will further follow-up be required?
Depending on what information we already have from that child's physician or previous diagnoses or health concerns that that student has, if there is information from the physician stating that it was due to something else, we would allow the student back. So there will be required follow-up.
All of the superintendents in Kendall County next week have a meeting set up with the Kendall County Health Department. These are the same questions that every superintendent is losing sleep over, what to do when. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be case by case and how things come up, and contacting IDPH and contacting Kendall Health Department and saying, here's the situation, now what? I mean, it's also important to know that Rush Copley Medical Center Chief of Staff, Gary Catula, he is one of our board members. So he is an incredible resource for our school district that I would say not everybody has. He's been helpful in reviewing our medical plans, and will continue to do so as we work through the procedures and the parameters in which we're going to bring people back.
I also would like to mention that if your child is required to stay home, we would provide e-learning services for your child. They will not be home without support.
Earlier in the presentation, we saw that about 72% of parents expressed concern regarding other parents being honest about children in illness. With that data available to you, why was the decision made for families to self-certify online?
I think I should just stay here. So based on our committee's recommendation and the information from the Illinois State Board of Education, we determined that the path that we would take is self-certification. There will be a private area for students if they have not submitted their self-certification for a staff to work with that student to go through the symptoms and do a temperature check, and same for staff.
And I think, if you think about logistics, if you have a building, elementary or a high school building with 1,000 kids, what does first period look like? What does the line out the door look like? And, logistic-wise, number one. And I guess secondly, in the time that we're in, I have great faith in our community that people are gonna do the right thing. We are not gonna ding kids with truancy for a parent calling in to send kids sick. We are not going to do that. You have my word on that. So I have great faith in our parents and our students that we're gonna do what's right to protect the health and well-being of their teachers and of their peers in our community.
Thank you. I believe this is a software question. Will Canvas replace home access? Will home access still be used as a tool/resource?
Home access still will be used, but I think especially for the high school parents, and I'm sure it's for the middle school as well, I don't want to speak for Lisa, but I think for all of our parents, our students, and our teachers, Canvas truly is going to be the interface we will use. I have used the analogy that Canvas is truly the classroom now, right? Canvas is the classroom interface that you're constantly going to have, because ultimately what we have to be able to do, not only monitor students when they're on site, but when they're remote, and if we go into full remote. One of the biggest challenges that we had was monitoring student engagement when we didn't have those frequent touches with students. Canvas gives us that ability to truly look at and monitor student engagement. It's not always about how much time they spend on it, but how engaged are they in that during that time. And this is going to truly change the game for us. Certainly at the high school, we've been using Canvas for a number of years, and we've been doing blended for a number of years. So about 60% of our students have experience of blended curriculum during their time at Yorkville High School. So for us, we're familiar with it. However, we've never truly leveraged that tool and truly to look at student engagement. So I do think that's for all of our parents. And so parent access will be very different than you've seen in the past. It's not getting access through your student. You'll have your access to it, as well as our students and our teachers. So I think it's a big game changer for us. I would say the same for you. Yes, please. Right. And so you're not only monitoring grades, and you all know I'm a parent as well, and I look at my daughter's grades and I don't know what assignment necessarily is or what it means. However, Canvas is going to give you more insight into the classroom and allow you truly to partner with your teachers to support and guide your students through the process.
Thank you. We have one last audience question, and then we'll move to the online questions. Not including 504s or IEPs, how will you address students, parents, and staff who will not wear masks or follow guidelines?
We are currently updating our parent-student handbook to reflect information about the requirement to wear face coverings, and it is connected to our behavior policy, which I believe is 7190. And so there will be, consequences for students that refuse to wear masks that are not related to a medical condition. But obviously we have masks available for students. So if they come to the front door and don't have a mask, we will provide them a mask.
I think from the high school perspective, I think there's two things we're going to really talk about to our kids, and I think our kids have continually rose to the occasion. It's that idea of personal responsibility and mutual respect. I think our students are really good at that, and they understand that that's the importance of wearing masks. It's not about me, it's about us. And so we will certainly, from a high school perspective, that's an expectation we have for our students. And if they don't, we will work through that process with our students and our parents to get them on the same page. So to me, it's simple. It's that idea of personal responsibility and mutual respect, and I think our students are really good at that. I'd say the same for probably the school.
So I just want to say, with respect to both faculty who refuse to wear a mask or students who refuse to wear a mask and do not have a medical condition with a doctor's note, certainly we're going to teach them, like Melinda said, it'll be in our handbook, but at a certain point in time, it becomes a progressive discipline issue. And so if they continue to refuse to wear a mask, then the only option, at least for students, will be the e-learning option.
Thank you very much. And that is all of the audience questions that we have. And now we're going to move on to the online questions. So thank you to the audience for asking us these very good questions.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Vargas. Let's start with the popular one. Can you talk a little bit about what IVIC, our vocational program, is going to look like for our high school students, specifically the healthcare field?
IVIC currently, the way our schedule is designed was intentional. I know people are like, well, why did you guys go 1, 3, 7, 5, and 4, 2, 8, 6? The reason we did that was for many reasons, to put our lunches at the beginning and end of the day, allowing our students to leave campus. If they have lunch and access, they can go home for the day. But it also lines up to IVIC for our afternoon and morning IVIC programs. Mr. Barbic, our IVIC director, we've worked that out with him in terms of transportation as well as programming, and so our students can line up with that. Currently, our field experience program, and certainly IVIC's program, our medical rotations are still in play. We're still moving forward with that, and we have permission, and our partnership with Rush Copley and our external partners are still going. That was as of yesterday when I met with Ms. Wojcicki, our field experience coordinator. So those programs are still alive and well. Obviously, things could change. However, right now they're status quo.
Thanks. Just trying to keep up with you. Will we actually get to play in band or just have the class? There's actually a mirrored question to this about choir. Will students enrolled in choir, will it be converted to music theory, or will they get to take choir?
I'm going to say yes. However, I still think we're working out some of the details, how that's going to look. Ms. Morton and Mr. Smith and Mr. Anderson are still working out some things. My child is in another district, is choir is her life, and so I'm sure we're going to figure out how we're going to do that in a safe manner and allow our students to have that experience. But we haven't figured out all the details.
Please explain how students will take the same class as both an in-person and e-learner. Will all classes automatically be Zoomed, so students are learning in real time and learning the same thing?
Yes, that can be different at middle and high school, so maybe address it both.
Yeah, it could be different. You're right, Dr. Schimpf, it could be different at the middle school and at the high school. But what we want to provide is for students from a 9-12 level, at least an ability to move through curriculum asynchronously. And so on their own, at their own rate, in their own time. We do also have options for students to be able to live Zoom into a classroom if that's the learning path that is needed for that particular student in that particular course.
How many new staff have been hired to handle all of the different opportunities being offered? Sure. How many new staff have been hired to handle all of the different opportunities being offered?
At the high school level, we've hired no additional staff.
That's true for the middle school. We're not opposed to hiring staff if it comes to that, but as of now, there hasn't been a need based upon the models we created.
Will students be able to see each other online?
I'll make an assumption on that question that it is a student who's elected for an e-learning option.
That is my assumption.
And so the answer to that is yes. They will be able to see each other online, assuming that our students have turned on their cameras on those Zoom calls. Otherwise, they may see their name.
I wanted to circle back to the question about hiring additional staff. I mean, one of the questions earlier was, you know, how are we actually affording this, and with an attempt to keep a balanced budget. Until we receive information back from families of which learning model they're committing to, it really wouldn't make sense to hire too many additional staff. So we're waiting to kind of get that feedback and to make a decision.
And just to add on to Dr. Bachman, I think that it's a misnomer that if I'm not in school, I can't engage in the classroom or instructional experience. Asynchronous learning is learning the same content, it's just learning in a different place, really. And so many of the times I would say just in our regular classrooms, I don't want our teachers standing up and just standing at a board and pointing at a PowerPoint and telling kids to sit there for 47 minutes. We want our students engaged in the content. And we have to move into a world, and the world of work is moving in this direction. We all are moving in this direction. That just because I'm not physically there doesn't mean I can't engage in content. We expect our students to be engaged virtually through collaboration, as well as we expect them to engage with students who could be on-site working that day as well as off-site. Our students are used to that model. They're used to engaging in those various places. So the physical location shouldn't dictate whether or not they can engage in the classroom.
Mr. Travis, while you're up there, why is the high school hybrid and on-site plan the same? Shouldn't there be an all on-site plan?
So 100% of our students coming on
The same day?
every day?
That's my assumption.
I think when we really looked at from a social distancing perspective and the number of 1,900, we have a very, for 1,900 students in a normal setting, our campus is plenty large enough to do that. I think if we put 1,900 kids all at one time in our building, we're not sure social distancing wise and safety wise that that's probably the best approach for our community.
I don't know if this is middle school or high school. Will students be able to walk through their schedules prior to the beginning of the school year?
The transition process for the middle school as well as our, our rising ninth graders is critical. And we really did miss that opportunity this past spring for our sixth graders to come and visit and our step-up night. We didn't have our Foxes Festival for the high school. So our team, and along with the high school team, are really thinking about what can we do differently this coming year to allow our incoming students that have never really been here before to get a sense of the building. You know, thinking about our typical registration date, that's going to have to look a little bit different. So we're trying to figure out how we can do that and provide that for our students. We don't have all the details yet, but the brain is spinning on how we can make sure that our students are welcome to Yorkville Middle School as well as Yorkville High School.
Thank you. I don't know who to direct this at, but there is a question coming in about the differences in the hybrid options across grade levels. So will students in families, all of their students attend on the same day across different buildings? Has that been considered?
For the high school, we would give the option. We really initially thought that we would just put all siblings together because it would make sense, right? But then we thought, well, maybe parents will say, you know what, I want one of my students to be home, maybe because for other reasons on our red or white days, you know, group 1 and then group 2, they'd be home. So we're going to leave it up to our families. If they want them together, if they drive together, it makes sense. But if they choose to have 2 siblings separated, we're fine with that.
Yeah, and I think the devils are in the detail with this one, depending on the age spans that are within the family. Certainly, we would not want to intentionally separate families for AM and PM. We want to make it most convenient for families. So, for example, I've got 3 children across 3 multiple grade levels, and if we choose the hybrid option, I would hope that our district would put us in, when I say we, I meant really my wife, she chooses that option. But if she makes that choice, and then we have that opportunity, I would assume that our district would make an AM or a PM exception, and that would be true for students that would be in the middle school and the high school as well. And so we would have to work with the families based on the age span of the children, the number of children, and the family preference in order to make that decision.
Thank you. Dr. Marcello, will case managers for children with IEPs be checking in with students and parents on a regular basis? Is there time and/or an option to schedule Zoom meetings to check in for student accountability and to stay on track with goals?
Could you repeat the last part of that question, please?
I can. Is there time and/or an option to schedule Zoom meetings to check in for student accountability and to stay on track with goals?
Yes, so similar to what we did in the spring, there will be an expectation that case managers will be checking in with both families and students who are doing e-learning. Certainly, though, we do want to make sure that there is also time for direct instruction. So there's a little more flexible. What we learned from our staff in the spring is that we need a little more flexibility based on what the student and the family need. Some students and families need more than other students as far as frequency of contact.
We'll go about 5 more minutes, Michelle.
Thank you. Mr. Travis, can you speak to how the labs will work in AP courses if students choose an e-learning option?
I think our staff is going to have to work through some of those challenges of how we're going to do remote or virtual labs. A lot of folks, what they're doing, we have an amazing AP Science team, and our teachers are amazing, but a lot of what they do is they do demonstrations in which students would then model those demonstrations and then report out the results. Because certainly the AP for last year, they made some concessions in terms of content, but they will not this year. So certainly our team is already starting to work on how that would look for a student that's in a full remote learning experience.
If more than 50% of families choose all-day, everyday option, how will the district decide which students receive this option? And are there any criteria in place to decide how students are chosen, or will it be by lottery?
You know, there's not a limit on the amount of students that can choose certain options. And so the information that we're waiting on is we need to find out the preferences of our families first. We need to find out the preferences of our employees and then match those individuals together. And so our intent is to provide all of our families with their with their selected option.
And what that might impact is when we start looking at library space, gym space, cafeteria space, that's where what might be impacted. But, I think our goal is to get as many kids in their schools and have some interaction that want to be there. And we understand if they don't, we respect that decision immensely. Whether it's full-time, part-time, second quarter, whatever that is.
Mr. Travis, can you clarify, I suppose this applies to middle school, will students still be changing the locker room for PE?
No.
Thank you. Will there still be extracurricular activities and after-school groups?
Our best hope is yes.
For high school students, was the option of skipping lunch at school considered, given it's the second to last period if they started their day earlier?
Yes. I'm just trying to be quick because I know we're running out of time, so I want to get this very quick. Yes, our schedule is designed specifically with students to leave. We put in a block of time, an hour time for lunch access in the middle of the day for all students, and we have spaced it out that we can serve those students if every student ate. But right now, when we have open campus now, most of our seniors and juniors leave already. So our seniors and juniors, we will give parents with permission if they want to take their students home for lunch and take them and keep for the rest of the day. That's their prerogative. So it allows us to clear out a footprint for our students. And one of our parents I already know is looking forward to that because they're going to take a class at community college. So it's really what we're trying to do is create options for everyone.
Is there any option to opt out of a gym class?
We do have a waiver process that we would have to go through, PE waiver process, but we're not simply just opting students out of PE as an option.
Did I understand correctly that students can learn at their own pace, allowing them to finish a course early?
We're going to provide some options for students to do that. This is going to be a limited option. We have a couple of our staff members that are a little bit ahead of building the infrastructure of a course. One of the challenges for that is we have to have the course built in advance and all of the structures in place for the student to work at their pace. Because if we're just working 2 days in front of the student, that's really not self-paced. It's kind of, we're just giving it to them as we build it. So we do have several staff members a little further ahead in that process. We're still working through those details. So that will be on a kind of a small scale basis at this point in time, but we're hoping as we do this in the future, that will become more of a reality for many of our students.
Yeah, and that'll be on a limited basis based on how staff has built that infrastructure of that course with the intent of down the road to provide that option at a larger scale for us.
We just don't want to set students up to fail. Because at the end of the day, we also have to understand that with high school, everything that goes on that transcript counts. There's longer term impacts, college impacts in those pieces, and we don't want to set our students up for, yes, they've got through a course, and many schools use a third-party vendor to do something like that. We want to make sure they get the curriculum and a viable experience that prepares them for a post-secondary option.
There's one about grading. I just want to find it. How is the grading system going to, what is it going to look like? And will students be given letter grades?
Yeah, we'll be following the same learning grading plan that we have in years past, regardless of which educational model that the student selects in. They will still be taking all of our common course assessments, and will still be required to take all of the state assessments at this point in time, unless things have changed from the state level.
We're going to start with the middle school, just standard space.
Oh, yes, I can. From a 7-8 perspective, recently we had plans in years past to go to a hybrid model, which includes standards on the report card for 7th grade and 8th grade. We accelerated that because of the opportunity for us to provide some standards-based grades at the middle school in the 4th quarter. Our middle school administration surveyed staff and worked through the details of that. And so next school year, our middle school students will be getting a hybrid report card. And what hybrid in report card terms means is that there will be a report out on a specific standard and a traditional letter grade that the students will get. So they'll get the traditional ABC letter grade, and then also they'll get a mark that is reflective of how they did in the specific standard of that course.
And that will be true for whatever model the students have chosen to go through.
Can you provide some clarification as to what kinds of pre-approved visitors are allowed?
I think as we look at deliveries, as we look at if we do have parents coming in for whatever reason, a face-to-face meeting, or meet with the administration, you know, obviously if we have, for some reason, a parent has to come in and pick up their child, that would be a pre-approved visitor. We'll be very, very mindful of who's entering our buildings from a health standpoint. We have drop-off, you'll see in our plan, drop-off and pick-up procedures for people escorting students to the car, looking at IDs, making sure it's the correct parent. I mean, it's not going to, again, be anything that we have been accustomed to over the duration of our educational work. Last one, Michelle.
If my child participates in the hybrid option and comes down with an illness, can they jump to an all e-learning temporarily until it is safe for them to return to school?
Yes. Right? I hope you're hearing the responses. We're giving choices, and we want to meet the unique needs of kids and parents and their families. My team probably cringes because one of my phrases I always say is find reasons to say yes. Find reasons to say yes for kids, find reasons to say it for staff and for our parents. And I don't think this is an exception. So as we start creating models and as you start selecting models, if there's something that's different because of your child's situation or your situation, and you're wondering, well, it doesn't fit into what's been developed, ask to start with the building principal or the district office or me or whoever that is, and ask the question, because you may open up ideas for others or avenues we haven't thought of. And that's what, again, over the next week, please pay attention to our website, please pay attention to communications, please review the plans that are out there, and please submit comments or questions if you have them. We want them, we need them, we need the partnership, we need the patience, we need the grace. Again, I'm blessed and fortunate to serve this community, as are the people that are up here. I know 4 of our cabinet members, our committee members themselves, and the kids. There's an investment in all of us. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing and proud of the committees. And I'm excited about the possibilities as we move into August. So thank you for participating either online or certainly in person. And we look forward to the continued conversation planning for 2021. Thank you.